Hi,
Okay.
thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh no, my pleasure.
Uh,
Sorry, I
so,
missed you before.
so we always like to kind of get things started by, by saying one, while we are a fan and we know about you as far as what we see in public and what we hear in the music, we like to get to know our guests a little bit earlier, um, like childhood years. So if you kind of go back to like the 5-year-old Ron Sexsmith. Uh, were you the studious type who wanted to be in school and pay attention to all of the teachers at an early age, or were you rambunctious and ready to get out of there?
Well, I mean, going to school, I remember my very first day, kindergarten was very, uh, traumatic actually, because I didn't know where I was going. And then when I got there and realized that my mom wasn't going in with me, I was literally holding on to the bottom stair where they tried to pull me into the school by my legs. And that was my beginning to school, or in my introduction to school.
Oh, that's
Um,
hard.
and I sort of, I got into it, the routine of it. I remember having, we all had to sing a song at one point during that first year, and I can't remember if I chose it, but I had to sing the Baba Black Sheep in front of the class. The first public performance, I guess. But I remember being just kind of breaking down in the middle of it because people were looking at me. I mean, I was not into school. I really liked being home with you know, my the records. I used to love playing records and I love listening to the radio. I've been obsessed with music like probably even before school, and school was just sort of in the way really of
Hmm.
me,
What
becoming what I was hopefully going to become.
what were those records that you were playing when you were at home? Like what were the ones that were really grabbing you? Is there a specific one you can think of or a memory that you kind of latch
Yeah,
onto?
well, I remember them all. I mean, the thing was, my there was a box of 45s, and I think they belonged to my dad, who wasn't really in the picture. He'd left them behind, and there was a lot of 50s kind of doo-wop and
Oh.
country, Little Anthony and the Imperials, and I remember that Johnny Cash Ring of Fire was in there,
Mm.
which was, I was really uber focused on the lyrics. As a kid, you kind of take everything so literally. So that song was quite frightening actually to hear. But the song though, I always cite this one as the first, the song that kind of started it all was a song called "It Doesn't Matter Anymore" that Buddy Holly sang,
Mm.
and I just I became obsessed with this song, just the sound of his voice and the strings. And I realized at an early age that it was written by a Canadian named Paul Anka, who my
Oh.
mom also had some of his records. And I thought that was interesting that, how did that happen, sort of thing. So that song I played over and over and over. And I was also aware of the fact that Buddy Holly was dead and how he died, which gave it an extra kind of sort of eerie quality. Um, but there was other songs like there was a song called "Running Bear." I don't know if you remember that song. It
Mm.
was I can't remember who sang it, but again, I'm sure it was about the love between an indigenous man and I think a white woman. But I took it as an actual bear running. Whenever I heard the
Uh-huh.
song, it was mentioned this
Uh-huh.
bear. I didn't know what the story was, and I just thought that was pretty funny. And I don't know. There's all these songs. Then we'd have some weird. They had a weird, like "Roth to Dublin in the Green." This kind of sort of militant song that we had that on 45, and
Huh.
um, you know, "Any Day Now" by Elvis Presley. I remember, but there was a lot of 45s, and because um, my mom didn't really care that much about them. I was allowed to play them as a kid.
Nice.
They weren't even in dust covers or anything. They were just in a box, loose. So
Yeah.
I would just play them all, and I wanted to know what was on both sides of the record. So that was 5-year-old Ron Sexsmith, um,
That's
just listening, either listening to the record player or listening to the whatever was on the radio.
I
uh,
love that.
when when for you did you go from the literal meaning of things? How was it when you figured out the metaphors of these pieces? And did it change your perspective and feeling about the songs?
Yeah, I mean it took a while. I mean, I remember I was a big fan of Elton John and I was a member of his fan club. And almost all of his albums would come with a lyric booklet or lyrics, and I really appreciated that. I would listen to the album and read the lyrics. And most of those lyrics went right over my head. I didn't know some of them were kind of naughty in places.
They were
And I didn't, and I kind of like that about that period of music because it wasn't music for kids. It
right.
wasn't talking down to you there were very adult songs on the radio,
Yeah.
um, very thought provoking. And as a kid, trying to understand what the grown-ups were singing about or talking about was interesting. Um, so I mean, it was probably even uh, years later when I revisited some of these songs that I realized, oh, that's what he's singing about after all. I was too busy at the time, just going from one obsession to the next
Yeah.
musically. And, um, but yeah, it's I I feel that the mystery of those lyrics and the meaning of those songs or whatever, I think that's part of it. And I think at the time, I feel like these days, and again, I sound like an old man saying this, but I hear a lot of pop music and I don't find a lot of nutrition, soul nutrition in these songs or thought-provoking words. It's like I want your body or whatever it is. And those songs have their place or whatever. But
Right.
as a kid, hearing a song like Nowhere Man on the radio kind of blew my mind. What a concept for a song. Hearing again talking about Elton John, hearing a song like Daniel, which was the first one I ever heard, and that was like, I could tell he was singing about some kind of pilot or something,
Right.
but he was blind. I didn't really understand, but it just made everything feel kind of mysterious and sort of magical. And yeah, I'm really glad I grew up at that particular period because it was also very melodic period of music.
Right.
I love that. When did that kind of shift happen for you where you became kind of that listener to needing to express music yourself and start writing or singing or playing?
Well, singing was my first love. I was the proverbial kid singing into a mirror, with a hairbrush, or I did
I
all
feel
that,
you.
and I knew all the words. I have this kind of uncanny ability to memorize lyrics, and so I was always singing. Nobody ever said, "Hey, you have a great voice" or anything, but I was always like singing along with the records. So that was kind of at first that was what I thought. Well, maybe I could do that. I could be the singer in a rock band or something. As I got a bit older, I guess around 13 and 14, I had some buddies and we tried to start a rock band, and I wanted just to be the singer, but nobody wanted to play guitar, so I got kind of guilted into playing guitar, and I was really not interested. I was more interested in the piano
Hmm.
because Elton played it, and Charlie Rich, another favorite of mine, played the piano. But there was never one around. You could never find a piano. So
Little harder to lug with you to practice.
yeah. And I remember at one point my mom was supposed to get her childhood piano. We were supposed to have it, but it went to her sister, who and they used it to put plates on and stuff. They didn't even play it. So had I gotten that piano at that age, I think I would be much better on it than I am now. But so anyway, so it was around that time when I joined this band that we tried writing songs. We didn't have any ability to write songs. Like now all these kids are 14, 15, writing all these
Right.
amazing songs. We had the stupidest songs. We had one called Prehistoric Lady. And the only reason we had that song is because there was a song on the radio at the time called Evil Woman by
Yep.
ELO. And we
Yep.
thought they were singing Medieval Woman, the way he sang it. And so we thought we should write a song like that. Well, how about Prehistoric Lady? Yeah, that sounds good. And so we wrote, so we just had really stupid songs. I think it was somewhere, but I could hear, I knew what a good song was when I heard it, but it just didn't seem possible. And I just thought that's something you either have to learn to do and it really wasn't until I was, 21 when my son was born that I started having all these ideas for songs.
Mm.
And it really was life changing because I didn't do well in school. I got out with just exactly enough credits. And all of a sudden, I'm a dad at 21, and I felt all my dreams had just been shot down.
Mm.
But then, because I think I went and did the responsible thing, not that I didn't want to be like my dad took off when I was young. I didn't want to be that guy. Yeah. So I had all these songs coming to me, and I knew that from reading so many interviews about rock stars and that's what happened to them. They would have all these song ideas in their head. And now it was happening to me. And all of a sudden my life had, purpose.
That's beautiful. We always say our daughter is our North Star and kind of keeps us aligned and
Yeah.
on our purpose. I
I
think
hope
that's true
that's
for a
what
lot
they
of people.
do. Yeah. I mean, my kids are like 41 and 36 now. And I mean, it's just, I mean, it all worked out, but it was hard, because we
Yeah.
didn't have any money. And then when I did get signed, I was just never home. I was just solid gone for a long time. So, but I think I always, you know, I sometimes I shudder to think I had, what might have happened if I didn't go to Quebec and
Right.
be a dad and all this. And, so I really credit my son's arrival as the kind of catalyst to my whole life, really. So.
I love that. Well, are there any like musical mentors that you can
Mm.
think back to that kind of helped shape or guide you or uh kind of
Yeah. I mean, there was a few. I mean, I have to credit my older brother Don because he was playing in a covers band at this local bar called the Lions Tavern. And I had just gotten out of high school with very, very few prospects or anything. And I was trying to figure out a way to get some money so I could buy Christmas presents. This was, the fall or going on winter. And he says, "Well, I can get you an audition at this bar, but you're gonna have to learn, you're gonna have to learn some Neil Young, you're gonna have to learn, give this whole list of people, Neil Diamond, whoever." And so he lent me all these records, and I started learning all these songs, Beatles songs, everything, and which was also very good for me just to get better on the guitar because I wasn't all that great. So I went down, I did my audition, and I started playing the bars, and which was a huge education just in getting up on stage and dealing with drunks and things like that. Um, but while doing that, I met a couple of people. One guy was named Claudio, one guy was named Randy, and they were much older than me. I was 17, these guys were in their 30s. And I started hanging out with these old dudes, and they turned me on to all this music, like Dylan and all these people I'd never really heard. So they were kind of mentors in a sense. And also one of them I traveled across Canada with at one point because I'd never been out of my hometown, and we played on the street, and it was a huge adventure, and that was a big thing. And then I guess the next phase would be a bit later on when I got to Toronto because that's when I started going to the open stages. And there was all these songwriters that I thought it was pretty good at that time, but until I heard these other songwriters. And some of them were older, like in their, 40s, 50s, and I'm in my 20s at this point. And there was a couple, I call them the Holy Trinity of songwriters. There was a guy named Sam Larkin, who's not with us anymore, a guy named Bob Snyder, not the American Bob Snyder, but this East Coast Bob Snyder, and a guy named Kip Harness. And they were like the Holy Trinity for me. And I would watch them every week because every week you'd go and you'd play two songs. And they were playing these amazing songs, and I'd get up there and it'd be like a tumbleweed, I'd play so no, it would never go over. And I was really struggling, thinking, well, maybe I'm not that good. And I was also working as a courier at the time. So I was writing a lot of my songs on the job. And it was around that time I wrote a song called Secret Heart because I tried to do the thing that a lot of these folkies are doing, where they wrote songs that had 8 verses in it and things like that. Those like
Yeah.
Dylan type of things. And I wasn't good at it. And these guys that I was listening to were great. And I love Dylan and all those people that could do that. And so what happened was one day on the job, I'm thinking, well, what can I do? Like what I can't do that. And I went all the way back to the beginning, and I thought, well, Buddy Holly was the start of it for me. And his songs were very straightforward, very simple, very conversational. And that's when I wrote Secret Heart, was me trying to write a song like True Love Ways, basically. And once I wrote that song and I debuted it at the open stage the next week, it was the first time in the room where something shifted, and
Yeah.
people were coming up after. And even these songwriters that I admire were saying, "Oh, you got it. That's a really good song." And that that did wonders, for boosting my confidence. And I started to find a way in, like an approach that I could sort of call my own.
And sometimes it's that learning that you need, having that reflective piece that helps you grow. And for me, Secret Heart was it was a gift. I haven't been able
Mhm.
to listen to music in quite a long time, and your music was kind of my introduction back into music. And Secret Heart was the first song I listened
Yeah.
to of yours, that was like my refresher back in. And it was just such a gift to open back into. Um, so I just wanted to say thank you because it was like just a little piece of light for me, and just a beautiful way to step back into the world of your music. So it was a
Thank
lovely way to do
you.
that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I remember at the time, I was so excited to finally have a record deal, but I didn't. It was weird because when I in the '80s, I was trying to get a record deal. Nobody wanted me. I didn't have the sound or anything. I didn't have the look. And all of a sudden,
You didn't want to be a new wave artist?
well, I didn't know how to do that. And then also, but then, then I'm in the '90s and I have an album out, and I don't have that look either. I don't have the sound or the '90s sound. The label really didn't know what to do with me. Because I'd be traveling, touring around in '95, opening up for everybody, and not really, not really going over and not hearing anything like me on the radio. It wasn't,
Right.
and it was kind of, but I don't know, it was a curious time, but at the same time, I felt that. Before the '80s, it wasn't about being a songwriter. It was kind of about having crazy hair and being British and ironic. It was the '80s. And all of a sudden, with the '90s, it was possible for a guy like me to come through, maybe thanks to Nirvana or maybe thanks to Cowboy Junkies. I don't know. For a guy who could come and just sing without irony, uh,
Yeah.
you know, and I was kind of the first guy on the scene in a weird way. I mean, this was before, Ryan Adams was still in a band. Rufus
Hmm.
Wainwright hadn't arrived yet. Um, none of these guys that sort of came and surpassed me in success, whatever, like they weren't even there yet. But so I felt kind of initially there was quite a lot of attention from the press and stuff about me, just not a lot of radio
Right.
or anything. It wasn't until the Elvis Costello thing happened and that sort of changed everything for me.
Yeah.
And gave me a leg to stand on.
When you look at the people that over the years you've surrounded yourself with, that you've worked with,
Yeah.
the Elvis Costellos, the Nick Lowe's, how do you see yourself in that group?
Well, at the time, that was kind of all I had really. I mean, when the album came out, again, I didn't have radio, I didn't have sales, but all of a sudden I was getting all these, you know, the old guard, I guess. They were giving me their blessing or something, which was weird. I mean, like Elvis Costello and Elton John, who I was a member of his fan club, and uh, people like Randy Newman saying nice things or John Hyatt. So I felt that it gave me, it made me feel like I wasn't crazy for pursuing it if these guys liked what I was doing. And I think what they saw in me was that they could see that I had so much respect, I think, for what they did and for songcraft and for just trying to walk in their footsteps. I think they could see, like Elvis Presley, my aim was true or whatever it was. And but it was amazing and surreal that, here are these people I kind of looked up to and worshiped, and all of a sudden I get in the door and they're right behind the door, and all these people are there, and coming to my shows and this and that. It was exciting, and and again, with the label, they could it just bought me time. They could say, well, something's happening here. So because there was talk of dropping me, that first year. But they decided to get my album out, released in Europe and Australia and all these places. And that's where I found my audience.
Nice.
And that kind of saved me really. So.
Now I've got to ask because I'm just curious, what was being a part of Elton John's fan club like as a little kid? What did he send out?
Well, every month you would get an envelope in the mail, and it would have there was like a newsletter telling you what he was up to, or what it was like typical fan stuff, like what he liked, what music he liked at the time, or what he liked to eat, or whatever. And then there usually would be some kind of 8 by 10 that came with it, and then a letter that I'm sure all the people in the fan club got, but it was like signed,
I
Do you
love that.
do you still have
Lavelle.
any of them?
Um, I doubt it. I did find the stub for the very first concert I saw was Elton in '76, and I have the
Ooh,
ticket stub for that,
Oh,
that's
that's
cool.
wonderful.
which was at the time I think 13.50 for that ticket, which was it seemed like a lot at the
That's
time. And
expensive for the
yeah,
show. Then that's a good price. But now
yeah,
that's an $800 ticket. So
yeah. And that back then you didn't have to, be on a lottery or something. You know what I mean? You could just go down to the record store and buy
wow,
a ticket.
the days
Now,
of sleeping overnight in front of
yeah,
Tower Records to
We
buy a
spent a
ticket the
lot of
next
time.
morning.
I did that many times where I just camped out overnight
Yep,
to get tickets. And
that's how my that's what my
that
dad and I
seemed,
did.
yeah, well, that seemed hard, but it seems harder now you have to wait in line. Oh, you're like you're number 500 behind, or something.
Yeah,
Oh, I don't know how anybody can. I don't know. Someone's getting away with murder, and
it's
Yeah, we typically can't even afford the concerts we want to go to now, even if we
yeah,
could get in the lottery.
it gets a
That's
little
tough.
steep.
oh, yeah. Well, especially now with all the prices of everything, going up and gas
Crazy.
and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and I'm really lucky that I got in the door when I did, because I would not know how to start. I would, the young people, the young artists, I see so many times on Instagram or whatever. They're
Oh,
they're saying, well, it's so cost prohibitive, everything. Like, how am I supposed to tour? Everything, the
yeah,
hotels, flights. They can't do it. And
yeah,
I go out and tour, and I'm barely getting by. Even if all the shows are full or sold out, I'm paying for everything. And I don't even mind because I'm having fun. But
right.
to start out, now you'd have to be kind of, I don't know, it's really savvy with the internet, or really, and
You don't want to do any TikTok dances later for
well, no, I'm already on the internet too much. Like,
right.
I didn't want anything to do with Instagram, and now I've been on there posting. I didn't, with my wife started the site, and she's great at all that stuff, and she said, well, it'd be helpful if you got on there, and so now I'm on there, and it becomes addictive. Where you gotta
Yeah,
post something, and then you gotta go back and see if anybody liked it.
yeah. Well, and it's hard because you know, it, and when we were all going to shows as teens or in
Yeah,
our 20s, you discovered bands by walking into the club.
yeah.
You discovered bands by standing outside and going, "Do I want to pay for the show tonight?"
Hmm.
And then you walked in the door, and now everybody just sits at home and it scrolls until they find something they like. And there's not that ultra human connection that can sometimes just be really lost in
Yeah.
this generation with that.
Well,
Sometimes I think we have to find a way, almost like through it, since we're dealing with so many generations now.
Yeah.
It's like because I don't have as much mobility as I did since I don't drive anymore. So
yeah.
it's like my initial contact with things might be through the internet.
Mhm.
So I'm thankful for that. But then after that initial contact, um, I want to be able to access. I wish we could find a way to reimagine what it could look like after that internet access that can be
Yeah.
more accessible for all of us. Because we've all talked about like we wish there was more musical spaces where we
Mm.
could all
There would
access
be
them
more
with
kind people who just want to hang out and talk about music
well,
and
and they're
not,
playing music where we could
yeah.
all access it and it wasn't so expensive for all
Yeah.
of us or just something that
Mm.
looked different. But I think that's kind of the spirit of all of us is that we all kind of
Mm.
have big imaginations and
Mhm.
ways to reimagine what the world could look like. So I guess that takes me to my next question is I would love to know what would you reimagine or want the world to look like from kind of the lessons you've learned along the way? What would you want the world to be different based on what you've learned and you picked up?
Well, yeah, that's a tough one, because I am a bit of a Luddite, I don't have a cell phone and sometimes I wish all those things were never invented, or the internet, because I really I'm very analog, in my in everything I do. It's just I love listening to vinyl and the world could be I find it very stressful because even if you get a device and figure out how to use it, next year they come up with a different device and it's not compatible with the stuff you had and you had to and that sort of adds a lot of stress in my life. And I can't even go anywhere by myself anymore because you need a phone for almost everything. So I go with my wife is my manager and we travel and she can, scan this or check me in with that. And I don't know what she's doing. I used to be able to travel by myself, I just go with a paper ticket. Here I go. And so, but I do feel there are sort of dark forces at play that are kind of like puppet masters running all these, kind of stirring things up between people, getting people with clicks or with misinformation and getting people angry at each other. And that never happened before. And it's you try to pinpoint when did that begin, you know, sometimes I think it began with the 24-hour news cycle. Before you just watch news in the morning or you'd watch it when you got, at dinner time, there'd be the news. And it was usually local news.
Yeah.
Occasionally something would happen in the world that was noteworthy or something. But now it's just so much all the time. And it's usually bad news. And then you have people like Roger Ailes and those people who started this whole thing. It's like a 24-hour liberal bashing network, and they're still doing that.
Yeah.
And so I think some of those things, and that's all spilled over to the internet. And that's why I had to leave Twitter because people would just come after you for your opinion about anything. Um, Everyone has, the internet sort of gave everyone a voice, but maybe not every voice you want to hear, because you know what I mean? It's like,
Facts.
before if there was some kind of health emergency, they'd want to bring in an expert to talk to them. And now they don't even listen to the experts, they're like everyone's an expert or something. I think it was better before, and I wish it could be like that again, but I know that's not possible. So
Well, no, I think anything's possible, actually. And
yeah.
I think once we say it out loud and we start to believe in it, and kind of what I heard is that you missed that time when it was more about community and
Mm.
where we were more attached to each other versus
Yeah.
devices, and we actually talked to each other and listened versus kind of disconnected and went to that panic.
Well, yeah, and even again, going back, like going to so many concerts in the '70s and that you go to this, like go see the Who or something at a big stadium, 70,000 people. No, there's nobody's on their phone, right?
Oh,
There's no screens on the side of the like now. There's screens everywhere. So I'd be in like row Z or something, but everyone that was in that stadium was
yeah.
engaged with what was going on. Even if Pete Townsend looked like an ant, you were just like you were, and you see sometimes you'll see a photo from the band's perspective at one of those shows, this whole sea of people, and everyone is like
Arms raised.
into it. They're experiencing it now, not filming it, then showing people later.
Yeah.
And I feel that was such a real communal thing. It was like this
Mhm.
almost primal thing to be in this crowd, everybody feeling the same thing, you know. I don't know. So I thought that was. I wish it could be like that because now again, it's hard to get everyone's full attention. Some of those artists that I grew up with, they could almost literally stop time, you know, with their music. You know, they could be playing a song on the piano and everyone just, you know, they're not looking at their feet or looking to see who's in the room or something, you know. And I know I've seen that. I know that exists and it can again, but I don't know what it would take for it to be like that. And like I say, I have no say in the matter because I'm 62 and you know, I'm just like this guy, you know, this grumpy old man now. But yeah, but I'm really glad I got to experience that, and
Yeah.
because I know that you know, because it makes me sad sometimes for the young people who, I mean, maybe they're experiencing something I'll never get to understand too.
Well, and I think what you
Mhm.
said about you've already experienced it, so you know it is possible.
Yeah,
That right there is just the little seed that the world needs, is just people speaking that we know it's possible because it's already happened. So
and
it can
yeah,
always happen again. And just us continuing to speak it into existence of we want to see this happen again because it was a
mhm,
lovely time and it was lovelier than it is now.
yeah,
So let's do it again. Um, can
yeah.
that can change the world just in itself. There's a lot of us that miss that and want that back. Um,
Well,
so
I know in my own career, just we've been touring all year since August, and I don't play giant places. I mean, sometimes it's a big theater or, you know, or something, but generally I'm playing, you know, mid-sized clubs and small theaters, and they've all been very well attended. But I'm really lucky in that in my little universe and my with my fan base or whatever you want to call it. Like I get that in my shows. I play and everyone is really engaged, and you know they've all come in at a different point in my career, and this record they want to hear. And so yeah, they're phoning, you know, or filming me on their phones too a little bit. But I do feel that again, I'm very lucky I got in the door and I did because I think I've made a real connection with those people. For some people, my music would not interest them, or most people like it would not interest them at all. It's just, but I'm lucky that the people who are, uh, they're pretty devoted, you know, and it means I can go out there and play and do the one thing that I'm supposed to be good at. So, so I do feel I get that experience, that old time experience when I go out and play my shows. So.
well, that's wonderful. I know that when I listened to your music, I loved it. And part of our podcast is while I'm listening, kind of sit with your music and come up with a lesson that somebody might be able to use either in a classroom or just with people. And I had the most lovely time because it really, your music immediately made me think of this lesson that I used to do with my students all the time called heart mapping. And it is kind of a pre-writing activity that is pretty quick and simple with kids, but makes kind of the loveliest map of people's hearts. And it's just kind of little nuggets of stories, especially after our conversation today, makes me really think of you with all of the lovely stories you shared. So
Well,
I just really quickly will share kind of what the lesson is. So
okay.
with whoever you're doing it with, you talk to them about what small stories can be found in your heart. What are the small spaces in between kind of that long story to Disneyland that's really boring? But what happened on the way there? Like, did your brother throw up in the car? Tell me about that. Like, what's the tiny, funny thing that happened that
Yeah.
makes kind of life worth living? Those are the little nuggets that we want to put on our heart map. And
Yeah.
then we kind of draw those out. And so we sent it to you earlier, but I'm not sure. And I don't know if you'll be able
Nothing
to
ever really
see
shows
that.
up in these videos.
So
Oh.
we just kind of do a quick sketch and then they're just short little phrases. Um,
Mhm.
and then they can share them, but their purpose is as they kind of go through the year and they write, or if you're doing it in a workshop with adults. So for example, one of mine is Love in a Cup, especially after my brain injury. My lovely husband here, um, I had some real challenging times and he would every morning bring me a cup of coffee,
Mhm.
every day. And it was
Yeah.
a hard transition because I had to go from being a really independent person, I was the vice principal, to a
Yeah.
pretty dependent person who didn't work anymore. And
Yeah.
he really, that cup of coffee just kind of symbolizes everything
Mm.
for us. So that
Yeah.
that tiny thing symbolizes a whole story I could write.
Yeah,
So that's the lesson that we would share. And we thought
amazing.
we'd share it with you.
No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's been, Colleen and I, she's had the double knee replacement. So I was
Mm.
Florence Nightingale every day trying to bring food and trying to, be helpful. And sometimes I was, sometimes I wasn't, but that's the terms of endearment, with
Yeah.
the things that you do, because it could be on the shoes on the other foot one day,
Mhm.
So,
You really
um,
learn about your relationship in those times, and
yeah,
it's not an easy transition.
No,
no,
no, it is not. But I mean, there wasn't really an other option. So I mean,
so you have to
like,
step up when those things
yeah,
happen,
you just do.
Yeah, and yeah, because it's a frustrating time for everyone. You're frustrated because you can't do what you're doing before, and like for me, I have so many things I don't know how to do, and I was failing every day at stuff, at cooking or whatever I was doing,
I feel that.
but now we're over the hump, we're kind of back to normal until the next tragedy happens or whatever.
Oh,
So, but
Exactly.
but we can look back and kind of laugh about it now, or
yeah.
but that's all part of it. And but you would regret it if you didn't step up or if you weren't,
Oh
you know what I
yeah.
mean? So
I couldn't imagine doing
yeah,
anything else. Like it's what I do. We got married
yeah,
for a reason. We fell in love. Why not bring you a cup of coffee every day? Like that just seems silly.
yeah.
Well, and
But
that's kind of the beautiful mess of life.
I still bring my wife a coffee. I'm usually up before her. So when I hear her stirring when I'm downstairs and I hear her
Yeah.
I get her coffee and I bring it upstairs and usually she has it in the bath or something, but I
Oh,
Well,
see, transition from the bed to the bath
I
now. There
knew
you
I
go.
loved you and you knew I can.
no, I
So
love doing
Yeah.
that because again, for me, I'm not good at a lot of things. So anything I can do that it seems helpful, I'm,
Yeah.
I'm always amazed. So,
Love that.
yeah.
Well, we always like at the end to kind of ask, is there, if there's a song that you feel, and you obviously have a vast catalog, but if there was kind of a song that you felt would leave a life lesson or to the next generation, is there a song or two that you feel really
You mean like
encapsulates
a
that?
life lesson in the message of the song or
Hmm.
in just oh
whatever speaks to you.
yeah well, the one song I always go back to is a song from my third album called Seem to Recall that I always was really proud of. It almost didn't make it on the record, but
Mm,
I just feel it's a kind of a song about appreciating what you have, it's a there looking back on a time when I wasn't so needy or wasn't complaining about this or that. I seem to recall doing without, it says. I seem to recall, a time when, and it's kind of, it's that song for that album, for example, it's called Whereabouts. It was a bit of a disaster for me, and that was the one saving grace on that record. It was
mm,
the final song, and it has a spiritual component to it that it might have been the first time that it happened, where I felt there's something else going on here that wasn't maybe on my previous two records, and that I think I would explore on albums that came after. But and on this previous tour we were on, because we hadn't played it in a few years, but we got someone yelled it out one night, and then it became our final song every night. And
nice.
I'd forgotten how much I loved playing it, and I think it sent everybody home with a kind of nice glow. And yeah, so that's a song that I think, uh, yeah, I always feel it's a good message, and of just yeah, not asking for so much and just trying to be happy.
I think that's a lovely message. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Ron, thank you for being a part of Cassingles and hanging out with us today.
Yeah.
This has been really special for us.
It's been truly delightful. Thank you so much.
And
And
you guys are in Portland, you say,
we
right?
are, and we did a show. I feel like we've done two. I know we did a Star Theater show together. I think it was on the Valerie June tour.
Oh,
Um, and I feel like there was a Doug Fir show in like
yeah.
2011 11-ish, maybe
I used to like
2012.
I used to like that place. Yeah, Douglas
It's
Fir.
That's a
finally
good place.
they've
Uh,
moved. They're finally reopening it after it's almost 6 years. They're finally reopening in a new spot. It's looking really nice.
Across the street from there, one year I went and bought a T-shirt. It had a guy punching a bear in the face,
That sounds
and
Portland.
and yeah, it was very Portland. And then, but it was one in a series, and that I didn't know about. And
Ooh,
for the next few Christmases, my wife would order me another one in it. So I have one where the bear is punching the guy in the face, and then another one where the bear and the guy are jamming when the bear's on the drums. And so I've got about five of them now.
Oh,
that's
I love
amazing.
that.
But that's where it came from, a little shop across from Douglas Fir. That's
Oh,
probably not there
that's
either. So.
awesome.
Nice. Yeah, we're in Vancouver, right across from Portland, but basically about the
Yeah,
same
so
thing.
it's we've spent countless hours at Doug for a few years.
Yeah. Well,
Love
thanks for
Doug, a big
having
part
me.
of our marriage.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on with us. Give Colleen our best, and we look forward to talking with you again sometime.
Thank you so much
Right.
for your time.
Yeah. Take care. Have a good evening, whatever it is. Oh, no, it's in the afternoon, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Have a great
All right.
evening up there.
All right. Thanks, man.
Bye
Take
bye.
care. See you.